If inadequate power is one problem, then inefficient distribution of power is yet another. And the biggest of the evils, political interference with the pricing of power. Free power at the time of elections, power subsidies being given to agricultural users and consumers, all of that have left state electricity boards or state distribution companies, as they are called, in a financial mess. You add up the numbers and you're left with nearly 2 lakh crore in debt on the books of these state electricity boards. That means they're once again begging for a bailout. Madhu Bharti has the story.
It's been a summer of discontent for many in Chennai. As the mercury started to rise and power demand soared, consumer and industry were jolted by a steep hike in power tariff. After months of dithering, in June the state electricity regulator approved a hike in power tariff proposed by the government, taking the power cost to industry up by 20% and to consumers up by a massive 30 to 60%. Tough as the decision may have been economically and politically, the accumulated losses at the Tamil Nadu Electricity Board meant that there was little choice.
So some of the rates are almost decade-old rates, and that is why our present rates are quite low. For domestic consumers, it's as low as 50 paisa for the first few slabs. So there is a urgent requirement to correct it, because the cost of power has increased. The average cost of power, if you see per unit, has gone very high, because the input costs have increased substantially over the last few years.
The tariff hike announced by Tamil Nadu was among the steepest, but other states and their distribution companies were also in dire straits, facing heavy losses which pushed them to raise power tariffs steeply. Tamil Nadu's average 37% hike was followed by Rajasthan, which raised tariff by 27%, Delhi raised tariff by 26%, Andhra by 20%, Haryana by 17%, and Punjab by 12%. But the decision to hike tariff may have come many years too late. Years of unsustainably low tariffs have meant state electricity board losses have added up to 1.4 lakh crore, and the total debt has hit a staggering 2 lakh crore rupees.
I think the fundamental reason for the disarray of the state electricity boards is basically the ownership by the government of the SEBs. This ownership leads to a tendency on the part of the government to run SEBs as non-commercial enterprises, and to basically use the SEBs to target the socialist objectives of the states, which means suddenly you will try to use the SEBs to supply subsidized power to agricultural and small domestic customers, which means that you will not focus on the profitability of the enterprise.
Political leaders and their reluctance to hike power tariff repeatedly or cut power subsidies has been one of the main reasons for the poor financial status of the state electricity boards. And then there are some more reasons why they have been pushed to the brink. Reforms including unbundling of electricity boards into separate generation, transmission and distribution companies remain incomplete. Transmission and distribution losses across the power sector are much higher than the global average. Power theft is still widespread, and power purchase agreements are signed at unviable rates. Yet some of these are issues that can be resolved if there is a political will, and if the running of electricity boards and electricity commissions is delinked from the clutches of the state governments.
Even from a financial perspective, you have the regulatory commissions being dependent on the state governments. So there is a strong linkage between state governments and the regulatory commission, and somehow because a lot of these regulatory commissions are being manned by ex-bureaucrats, there is also a feeling amongst regulatory commissions that they are somehow subordinate to the state governments, that they are really not truly independent.
That may only be the first step. A change in the management structure of distribution companies has also become essential, and experts say that state must look at privatization or public-private partnerships as a way to improve efficiency in distribution. While a lot of these decisions in the power sector lie with the state government, the central government has also been drawn in to help reduce the financial burden on the state electricity boards. A planning commission panel led by B.K. Chaturvedi has proposed that 50% of debt held by SEBs be converted into state government bonds, which in effect would transfer half the debt burden from the electricity boards to the state government's balance sheet. The centre may also work with banks to convince them to restructure the remaining 50% of debt by extending the maturity of the debt. And a proposal for a 3-year moratorium on interest payments may also be considered. At the same time, the National Electricity Fund is being considered to provide interest subsidy to electricity boards for 2 years. But the proposals can only be pushed through if all state governments are on board, which the centre seems hopeful of.
State governments need to raise their own consciousness of the seriousness of the problem from the point of view of being able to deliver energy in order to power the growth rate of the state.
While politicians, regulators and the electricity boards battle it out, it's the consumers that are feeling the pinch, not just from sudden pricing changes, but also from ad hoc decisions related to power supplies. Nandakumar, an auto ancillary manufacturer in Coimbatore, has experienced this firsthand. He managed to wade through the crisis of 2008 with orders from top truck makers, only to lose them to Chinese manufacturers. The reason? He could not deliver his machine products on time due to lack of power supply.
Power cut problem மறுபடியும் கண்டினியூவா இருந்த காரணத்தினால எங்களால லோனை கரெக்ட்டா செலுத்த முடியல. டோட்டலாவே வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா ஒரு 30% தான் வந்து கம்பெனி ரன் ஆகிட்டு இருந்தது. ஒரு 1 லட்சம் ரூபாய் சம்பாதிக்கிற இடத்துல 30,000 தான் சம்பாதிச்சிட்டு இருந்தோம்.
The story of Indian power sector has been a dark one, be it the inadequate supply of power or the political interference in pricing of power or simply the mismanagement of the state electricity boards. It's been very poorly handled. The policymakers now have little choice but to take tough decisions and spark up the sector. In Chennai, Madhu Bharati, NDTV.
India's #1 news app just got even better. Download NDTV's new app, fully optimized for retina display, full screen view, faster response time, and Sudoku. NDTV's new iPad app. Download now.